Good evening. Today, Israelis are heading to the ballot box for the unprecedented fifth time in 4 years. And for the first time in 13 years, former Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is not running as the incumbent. But Bibi, as he's known in Israel, is hoping to return to power. Will he or will he not? I will talk to Louis Fishman, associate professor at Brooklyn College, who, in addition to his work on Ottoman Palestine, focuses on Turkish, Palestinian, and Israeli affairs. He divides his time between New York, Istanbul, and Tel Aviv. And Medyascope viewers will recognize him from our interviews in Turkish, probably. But though tonight we will be talking in English because we are now at Medyascope's English channel, Medyascope English. So if you have already, subscribed to our main channel, original channel, you can also consider to subscribing Medyascope English as well. Hi, Louis. Welcome to the show.
Welcome. Thanks so much for having me. And yes, it's this time in English. I think this time it's more important when we're talking very much in detail about some of these parties that it's best that I stand very correct in my language. But I've enjoyed in the past in Turkish and Medyascope. It's always an honor to be on Medyascope, such
Thank
a
you so much.
prestigious media site.
We feel the same having you. I'm just going to the interview right now.
Just jump in.
Yes, directly. They say this is a neck-to-neck race, between pro and anti-Netanyahu blocs. And some say it is a choice between lesser of two evils. Could you explain?
Yes. Well, it's always in the eyes of the beholder, right? It is, I think, for me myself, I'll explain in a second, that is the lesser of two evils. But I think what it is for many Israelis, it's a vote over the rule of law or a vote for the unrule of law. I mean, Netanyahu, if he gets 61 seats, the main thing in his mind is to pass a legislation putting off his criminal trials so he doesn't sit in prison one day, perhaps. He's doing this by creating a very fascist party in the works. We'll talk about it in a second. But he's ready to sell the country out to save his own behind, as I put it, right? And I think that is something we should state here. Remember that in the last coalition, the opposition coalition that actually became the government, the Yesh Atid coalition, and of course it's almost ironic that we forget our politicians who they were, because there's so many of them. But the last government had many right-wing people in it. We know that, and even now the ones running, we have within Gantz's party, we have some former Likud members. We have Lieberman, who's right-wing. So Israel overall is a very right. Today, the right wing is the strongest bloc, but it just turns out to this pro-Netanyahu or anti-Netanyahu take. And for that reason, I really do think it's, if Netanyahu is able to conjure up 61 seats, this is going to be the worst moment in his Israeli history for the rule of law. And also it's going to lead to the religious Zionist party, who is going to bring, for the first time, to the realms of ministers, people like Itamar Ben-Gvir, who is a known fascist who's been blocked from running in the elections in the past because it was declared in the past a fascist party, and homophobic people like Benzalel Smotrich. So, it really is, I think, going to be a major shift. Because if Netanyahu does build this government, it's going to be with this party, religious Zionist party, and it's going to, which is going to maybe even, they're talking about reach 15 seats, but it's also going to be the ultra-Orthodox parties of United Torah Judaism party, which is the Ashkenazi religious party, and then you have the Sephardic Shas party. So then what you have here, let me just finish, is you have almost for the first time also a far majority, or almost 50% of the government is going to be religious of some type. And that is showing a major shift in what we understand of what Israeli politics are. So I think this is a major moment. In a second, I can talk about the other group running as well.
Exactly, Louis. I mean, it's fascinating to see the similarities what we have in Turkey for these upcoming elections next year. Same discussions, same problems, and you put it so similarly that it's a vote between rule of law and between rule of not law. So we will discuss it in a moment, but I would like to ask, because as you said, I mean, I've been hearing and reading people both inside and outside Israel, and they are like you, voicing grave concern that this far-right bloc, as you call it, religious Zionism, could become the third largest party in Israel. Could you elaborate? And who are they?
Yeah. So, it's in general, Israel is a country very much like Turkey in some sense, that it's a very divided there's a divided social makeup. So 20% of the voters, we're not talking about the occupied West Bank and Gaza, of course. The occupied territories they're occupied. They have no rights to vote. We have to point that out. But among the citizens of the state, 20% are Palestinian, which really reflect the 20% majority, 20% minority of Kurds in Turkey. And you can't put them into one camp. That would be wrong to do that. And we see with the Arab parties and the Communist Party, which is a Jewish Arab party, is that they're mixed. Now they joined together and they became the third largest party also at one time. So the idea that the idea now coming third largest party is not as crucial, but still it sends a very, very large message. And it is worrying when there's only four parties in the coalition, and this is the second largest party. It means they're going to be ministers one day. Now, who are they? Itamar Ben-Gvir is a known radical Zionist who, now remember, the left wing also have Zionists. Zionist has turned into a bad word in most places in the world, but even 80% of the Jewish people around the world define themselves somehow Zionist. That can be either of saying, we want a homeland. That can be with Palestinians, without Palestinians, different ways. Or it can be the radical nationalists like Ben-Gvir, who really sees no room there for Palestinians whatsoever, and believes in a really strong fascist agenda. So he was blocked for years from running. He follows someone, the Rabbi Meir Kahane, that was assassinated in the 90s, that was eventually banned for running in the Israeli elections because it was a fascist party. And he also saw as his hero Baruch Goldstein, who murdered in cold blood 29 Palestinians while praying in Hebron. So this used to be on his wall. Now he says he's changed. What he's done is he's really cleaned up his language in order that he's not banned from the elections. So he is the story of these elections. So what happened was we could get he could get 3 or 4 seats at the most, but suddenly we saw a surge. And I think what Netanyahu did, Netanyahu said, you know what, we're afraid that Smotrich, or the religious Zionist party, won't be able to get in, and we're going to lose seats. So let them join together. So the real force behind the party right now is Ben-Gvir, although Smotrich, he is the leader of the party. And let's talk quickly about Smotrich. For years, the religious Zionists were from the beginnings of the state in 1948. They weren't a radical group but post 1967, they really became a great part of the Messianic. They're a big representation among the settlers, and it's turned into somewhat of a rogue party in that sense. So, which has become almost status quo, I have to say. I say a rogue party, but in their eyes, it's become status quo. So yes, these are people that are born and bred. I'm talking about the Ben-Gvirs, born and bred on a really fascist idea of transferring. His first party was Moledet that he took part in, the Homeland Party, and it was calling for the the removal of Palestinians from the West Bank by encouraging them to leave. He can't say that, they can't say that we want to expel, we want to do another Nakba, although they've said this in the past. They want another Palestinian catastrophe, but he can say, oh, well, if we can encourage them to leave, we can encourage them to go to Europe to get more Jews. It's very worrying, and it's I have to say, as a Jewish state, as the people that have suffered at the hands of fascism for so many years, it's more than ironic that it's happening in Israel in such a strong way. Unfortunately, we see the rise of nationalism across the world, and it's something very global. So I don't know if it's unique to them per se, but putting the history of Jewish people together with this, it should be quite worrying, and it should hopefully send a strong signal to the diaspora Jews that support Israel so strongly, that their blind support has led to this as well.
To underline your point regarding the scale of Zionism, that it's not homogenic in the sense, and not every Zionists are the same, and also you mentioned the diaspora, that not all Israelis are thinking the same.
Mm-hmm.
I just like to tell that Europe's largest Jewish student group last week warned that the rise of the Israeli far right could endanger both its members, maybe, and they called out people to speak out against hatred in the name of Zionism and in the name of Jewish people. I think that's very important, that these voices that we can hear now. But I would like to ask you something else, because about the Palestinians, for example, an Arab colleague, actually a Palestinian colleague, Ali Abu Nima of Electronic Intifada, when I posted our interview and commented a little bit about how critical these elections on Twitter, he wrote to me, he also knows Turkish, and he wrote to me in Turkish that for them, for Palestinians, or for most of the Palestinians, maybe we should differentiate between the Palestinians living inside Israel or under the occupied territories. But he said the Palestinian people, for them, there's no difference between Bibi or Lapid or any of them or any government, Israeli government. But though, he said, he would, or many of the Palestinians would prefer Bibi, since if he wins, he will be a shame, or the Americans, the European, Israeli friends, countries will be ashamed. So could you a little bit talk about that?
Yeah, well, that's really when I started this off, I said it's the lesser two evils in whose eyes, right? So for Palestinians, absolutely, we know that this centrist government has used a really heavy hand in suppressing Palestinian voices in the West Bank. I think this is, a starking numbers that this government has produced more deaths since 2005 of people protesting, innocent people protesting, overuse of ammunition on peaceful protesters. And we're not even getting to the idea of the rise in resistance within the Palestinian sphere, which when fighting occupier has a different standards, right? So in no way am I talking about within Israel. I'm talking about within the fighting that's going on between soldiers and between resistance groups. So, but I'm talking about right now just people going out, young people going out, looking the wrong way. And we see that they've been shot or they've been injured. We see a rise in settler violence that also doesn't just hurt the Palestinians, although Palestinians are hit harder. But also Jewish people going there in showing solidarity. So on one hand, yes, you can say that it doesn't make a difference. I think in the long term, though, it can make a difference, and that's where we get into the rule of law and different things like this. That's not going to really translate into the daily life of Palestinians, right? And I think that should be heard. But there is inside Israel, there is a vibrant political life and of Palestinian citizens that I think are really you can get 50% of the vote. That means 50% of them don't vote, right? A high voter turnout would be 50%, because many people express something what you were just stating right now, that it really doesn't matter what we do. I mean, if we compare it to Turkey, and I've written 2 articles comparing them to the HDP, the joint list that just broke up, right? Is the sense that you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. If you vote and you get too many seats, well, no one wants to sit with you, because they won't recognize your demands of immediately starting the peace process, right? But on the other hand, if you don't vote enough, the opposition party says, well, it's on you. It's your fault that you didn't vote enough. That's why we got Bibi, right? So you really have a situation, I think, with the Palestinian voters very similar to the Kurdish voters in Turkey, that you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. They have demands. Every ethnic minority has demands that somehow the ethnic majority just can't accept. And that's going to be the challenge, because the challenge in Turkey with the elections now for the opposition is to, which what they succeeded to do in Istanbul, right? They succeeded to do in Istanbul and Ankara, but especially Istanbul, where there's a much larger Kurdish population, is to find some kind of middle road. Now, Israeli Jews started doing this with, for the first time last government, you had Mansour Abbas, the Islamist party, join a government, right? And this was huge precedence, right? This was a huge precedence that it is now not that when we look at the opposite, when we look at the group's Lapid's ticket, right? Let's look at Lapid. Lapid has Gantz, a former general, who has Eisenkot, another former general, who has Gidon Sar, a former Likud, hardcore Likud. We have Lieberman, Victor Lieberman, who is of the Israel Home Party, which is a mostly Russian party, former Russians that immigrants, but who's right wing. Then we have Labor and Meretz that we're hoping that they're going to cross the threshold. Remember, the higher the voter turnout among Jewish population, that really affects the threshold of 3.5, right? So they can be pushed out, and that would automatically be a ticket to Netanyahu to go in. And then we have a party called the Hadash party. Hadash was leading the joint list, and it really was a group very much like HDP in the fact that the HDP, in the fact that they use them as a model of type. I think this idea of uniting together, right, over issues, and they eventually broke out. The Islamists eventually, one of the main things they're breaking up over was the issue of LGBTQ issues also. And the Islamists ended up going by themselves. They joined the government. Now, by joining the government, we had a new precedence that they can join it. So the interesting thing is that let's say that we get surprised and Netanyahu gets only let's say he gets not 61, but he only gets 59. Okay, let's say he gets 59 seats, and let's say that Hadash gets 4 seats. That's Hadash Tal. It's with Ahmed Tibi, who is a very he's one of the oldest parliament members.
I met him actually.
Ahmed
in the year 2000.
Ahmed Tibi is a amazing politician. He's been in, I think he's the longest running Knesset member, and I call him a fixer. When Palestinians have problems, he fixes them. He's a really trustworthy politician, and he's with Hadash after ballot left them. Ballot is the more nationalist party. Okay, so let's say that they get 4 seats. You have 57-4. I don't think it's going to happen, but then you could have sometimes a minority type situation government where Hadash says, you know what, we're not going to vote against the government. We'll only vote against Netanyahu, and that's going to lead Lapid to hold on for a few months, right? That could leave as a minority government. Minority governments don't usually happen in Israel. They happen when Itzak Rabin, before he was assassinated, on his last months, where he lost when he lost the Shas party, then you had a minority government with the Communist Party voting with the government, right? So it's very much similar once again to Turkey. I'll just say that. Remember in 2016, Erdogan actually loses the majority in the elections, and it was the MHP that said, you know what, this is our line. We won't sit with the HDP, right? We won't sit with MHP, won't sit with the HDP, right? So this is the idea that they'll sit with the Hadash party is almost next to nothing. But it's not Hadash's. It's not the Arab and Jewish leftists. Remember that it has always a Jewish parliamentarian. People like to call it an Arab party. People like to call the HDP a Kurdish party. It's not a Kurdish party. It has people from all backgrounds, right? So they have many Jewish people, a small amount compared to other parties that vote for it. So, they don't have to switch their agenda. But there are ways where they can facilitate, because let me end here saying that the only major change here is that Lapid no longer has Naftali Bennett with him, who is religious. Ayelet Shaked probably won't pass the threshold. So these groups that were giving Lapid problems are no longer there.
I was thinking about, because when you mentioned the scenarios and where, for example, Hadash could have 4 seats and everything, I thought about Eyal Weizman. You might know him, the famous Israeli architect who put his life into looking at Turkish people know him in a different sense, but what was his line of architecture? I will remember. But
yes, I actually, when you said architecture, I remember absolutely. Yes, I should know.
Okay.
I should know more. Yes.
No. He is doing. What do we do it after someone that dies? You go and look his body. What was the name?
No, the tombs or
No. It's the official thing that you have to check if why he's dead and.
When they go to the morgue, basically, and they
not autopsy. Anyways, it's not so important. I will.
Yeah.
He's an interesting line of work, but Eyal Weizman had a book called List of All Possible Evils, in which he discussed that he was discussing the Palestinians under occupied territories, their problems, and he was discussing that when they choose or they have this list of all possible evils, which means maybe leftist government or better government. But it doesn't work because it only makes the system more strong. He was using this wall comparison, the famous
yes,
wall.
absolutely, yeah.
Anyways, I just remember, so I just a little bit left off.
Yeah,
Sorry,
it is. I think that's like what I said for Palestinians, especially in the West Bank and Gaza. This is not their election. It's not supposed to be election. They know that they're sidelined to begin with. Their voices are not heard. And this really is, that's where the really differences become between comparing Turkey and Israel in that sense. Because often, remember, I'll give you an example. In Turkey, if a Kurdish person sort of sheds his or her identity to an extent, there is a route to integrate, right? For Arabs, there's no route to integrate. So in a way, we can compare often. If you look at the Palestinian citizens of Israeli state, you say, oh wow, they have great rights. They're in the parliament. Very few have been arrested over the history compared to the head of HDP is in prison, right? Salatin Demirtas for 5 years now, and we have numerous people in prison. Well, that doesn't happen. Well, that happens in the West Bank. That's for sure, right? Israel can arrest without any reason whatsoever needed to arrest. They have no civil rights whatsoever, and that's where you look at the Kurdish side. It looks suddenly a lot better than there, right? So it's very sort of hard to compare. But the lesser of two evils, I think that once again, to get back to that, you're absolutely right. I've been very open about the party I support. Usually I don't talk about it, so I'll put it aside. But it would be a party that supports that not to do either side, perhaps, right? Absolutely.
Well,
usually when I do my analysis, I don't talk about what I support. I try to, but this is turned into a nice, very warm talk, right? So I totally get it, and I can explain something real fast to you. Maybe the problem is is, and I would with the Israeli left, is the fact that the leftist Zionist, Zionism is turned out to be one of the biggest curses for the Israeli society. In the word that there's no other word for patriotism. Almost, you have patriotiyut. You have something. Word we were talking about this on Twitter. So the it's sort of like when you talk about Kemalism, right? Well, that means so many different things to so many different people, right? It really can lead you to a very far left, conservative left outlook of uniformity, but it can also be someone cool that doesn't care about a headscarf or anything else, right? Nowadays, right? So the Zionist left party merits. I almost think that if they were not able to cross the threshold, this would give a chance for a true Jewish left to emerge, because I really believe that the sort of capitalist elitist leftists, right, who are declared social democrats, perhaps, are in a sense blocking a real left, Jewish Arab left. Hadash has Jewish support. Hadash's main thing, and I'll go ahead. I've written in the past that they have my support. I said it here because this is more of a warmer talk, longer talk. But it also has a problem that it's a communist party for the most part, and the communist guard is still there. You understand what I'm saying? And that's not very appealing to young people today.
No.
Yeah.
First, I should tell that it is forensic architecture.
Forensic. That's what forensic. Yeah, I thought about that.
Eyal Weizman is doing at Goldsmiths College in London. Just thank you. I just
exactly.
Thanks to Google.
Yeah.
And I would like to be frank, as you do. I would like to tell that, I mean, from our perspective as people trying to be critical or about Israeli government's actions, this Zionism always comes to your in front of you as you are being criticized as being anti-Zionist, and this very difficult problem that maybe the future generations, I don't want to wait too long, but I believe in the Z generation. So
I'll tell you real fast. The issue here is that almost 80% of the world's Jewish communities somehow define their connection with Israel, right? So Zionism is, no doubt, for Palestinians is to say it's offensive is understating it, right? It's offensive. But it's very much a nationalism, right? It's a Jewish nationalism, and it has its own historic things. The problem is, especially when you write about Turkey, I live part-time in Istanbul, and I write on anti-Semitism in Turkey in the past, and I've written on all the way back to the Ottoman era. There were anti-Zionist conspiracies that they overthrew Abdulhamid II, and they were behind the overthrow of Abdulhamid II, and I've been developing this. So, I think, there are societies that it's very hard to explain, and because it's so much interconnected with conspiracy theories, right? That it's really hard to explain that you have a leftist party and they're Zionists. But it's very easy to think about that, and you think about, well, it's sort of like the CHP, that they might be leaning towards left. Even their leftist corners might be quite left, but they're still somehow inherently Turkish nationalists, right? It's very hard to understand, and I think that's a spectrum that gets really people. They get stuck on that often. It's very hard, But the left in Israel, in a sense, it really mirrors the poor showing of left movements all over the world, right? And I would go into neoliberal economics, and that we definitely see has really weakened the left. And then since 1990s, we know that the world leftist movements have really petered out to a great extent. So something new has to emerge. I don't know when that's going to happen. That's really hard to say.
Exactly. I think we will. I would like to talk about this need for a new thing to emerge, but before that, I would like to ask about the voter turnout, because before while I was reading what's going on in Israel today, I read from Jerusalem Post that voter turnout is also unprecedented, the largest in any election since 1999. Now, it's unbelievable. I mean,
It's unbelievable.
so
It's
could you elaborate a little bit more
yes,
on that?
yes. It really is a message that the Israeli voters are tired of this and they want to exit from this, five elections. It's a waste of money. It's been a waste of time. It has its very long-term effects on society, on government, belief in government. And this is the only reason that, unfortunately, I think that the fascist party is doing so well, is that people are looking for quick answers, right? They've lost trust in definitely lost trust in their members. And I think they're trying that. So that's why I'm a bit worried. We'll see tonight. I'm a bit worried that this could mean a sweeping victory for Netanyahu. This could mean Yesh Atid of Lapid will get a huge push, or Gantz will get a huge push, but this might leave the other smaller parties out, which in the end will service Netanyahu, right? So it's really right. It's really hard. Remember, once again, because the voter threshold is 3.5%, right? 3.5.
Yeah.
So if you're at 3.8% and it's the old way, less votes, okay, looks great. But then suddenly you get 200,000 more votes for both big parties, and then that really lowers your chance of getting in, right? The success of the voter rate might lower their chance of getting in. Let me add that the voter threshold was only moved up in 2013 to block the Arab parties from coming in. Okay, and it's going to be ironic. This is by Lieberman. This is going to be ironic that this is going to, right? Turkey threshold's 10. Israel's used to be 2.8, 2.7, right? There were no problems for two Arab parties to get a Nationalist Party, Islamist Party, and Hadash, Jewish Arab Party. But now they're doing this. But this might also affect the Zionist parties, also the Jewish left parties. That's going to be changed. So we don't really know what's going to happen. It's a high turnout. Let me end by saying we don't know where this is right now. It's not. They haven't announced where this is because it would be intervening in the elections. But if it's Tel Aviv, it's going to be really interesting. If it's Jerusalem, it's going to be even more interesting. I do think that the ultra-Orthodox parties are a bit tired, and I don't think you're going to see a huge turnout with them. Okay, I don't think they're going to show a big difference. The question is with the Arab vote. The Arab vote traditionally comes out between 7 and 10 at night, right before they close the ballots, right? So
Very
you're
interesting. But Bibi we have seen Bibi waking up guys early in
yes,
the
you saw
morning.
the video exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, because
Not
Turkish,
just
maybe,
guys with not a shirt on, laying, cool,
yeah, very,
masculine, like get out
bodily
of bed, go
masculine.
do your
Yeah, yeah.
job, man. Yeah, exactly. I was,
Anyways,
yeah,
yeah, very, yeah. You stress very nice points that I would like to say, but
yeah.
quicker than. But since you know Turkish, maybe you can help to translate this Turkish expression into English, because I think what you told just right now is
Mhm.
summarizing this expression.
Yes.
Yukarı tükürsen bıyık, aşağı tükürsen sakal. How do you say it in English?
Yeah, if you spit upwards, it's your mustache. If you spit downwards, it's your beard. So I think that's maybe like you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly. I never heard that before. That's great. Great, exactly.
Okay. I would like to have. I would like to ask about this fascism rising everywhere in the world. I mean, it's not only Israel that we are talking about. Lately, in Italy, a woman who says was it what was the guy's name? I mean, which one? Ben-Gvir or Smotrich?
Ben-Gvir.
Who said,
Yeah.
I don't do it anymore. I changed kind of line. She uses the same line, but
Yeah.
actually in her party, there are members of Mussolini's relatives. It's unbelievable. Think about it in Germany, how it would be like that. I mean, so it's interesting, and so in even in Sweden, such party became, the helper of the government now, so that the government can function.
Yeah, I mean,
now.
and look in United States with the Trump movement. I mean, you have
yes.
you have the husband of the Speaker of the House attacked 82-year-old man, and you have people in the right wing, Donald Trump's son, making crude jokes that this was some sex scandal between Paul Pelosi and his lover when the man was attacked with a hammer by a strange man in his bed sleeping, right? I think it really is worrisome in that sense that we don't know where this is going. Ben-Gvir hasn't changed. Just 2 weeks ago, he got out his gun. He's one of the ones that went. Remember, Ben-Gvir's strategy is very straightforward. It's stir up trouble as much as possible. So go to Sheikh Jarrah, where you already know that there's high tensions, right? And then you pull out your gun and say, if they're throwing stones, let's shoot them, right? To the idea that this could be the minister of police is utterly crazy. And it's once again, it's the price that the country is going to pay for having a prime minister that wants to sell the country out to save itself from prison. It really is. It's really a frustrating things. Netanyahu won't stand on stage with Ben-Gvir, but he has private meetings with them all the time. So it's so in your face, this the way that they're allowing this. So he allowed the fascists to, and his government, if he gets a government 61, it's going to be very hard to imagine, how this is going to last also. I mean, if Ben-Gvir, you're going to have a really strong party apparatus. If Ben-Gvir gets what he wants, even a percent of it for people in the Likud to stay quiet, I think, or mass protests to happen in Israel. So I really see a sort of a continuation of a chaotic, unstable period. Let me say that the former governor of Bennett and Lapid did something in Israel that no government's done in a while, and this is why a lot of people like them. I think is that they passed a government budget which had been passed for years. They ran the country like a semi-normal country, right? Where not like Turkey and Israel, every day there's a new crisis, right? So you had some sense of stability, I think. Now, what we'll be going to is just pure chaos, I think. If Ben-Gvir does get in as a minister of police or something, you're going to see. And you know what? Like you had mentioned this other person before. It's maybe this is what the left needs. But I don't want to use this as a test run either. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it's a very. That's why I say it's very risky to say they're all the same. No, they're not all the same. That's for sure. They're not all the same. I know that many Palestinians don't support Mahmoud Abbas today, but the idea is that Gantz went to meet Mahmoud Abbas, right? The idea is he is still the only world leader for them, right? International leader. The idea is that in the last round of violence, Hamas did not take part, right? And it was able to be, quickly after a couple of days. But innocent people died. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that Hamas thought, maybe we should change our long-term strategies. And this might lead us really, if you want to ask some questions about Turkey also, how this, because I think Hamas also is starting to see Turkey re-situate itself, leading to this idea that maybe in the future there could be some change inside. I don't see it right now, and I don't see it with the Ben-Gvir government.
But at the same time, Hamas is talking with Bashar Assad. So I mean, we don't know. They are trying not to put their all eggs on the same basket.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I totally agree with you on that. Yeah.
Is fascism rising? I'm hopeful because resistance is also rising, and I'm very hopeful about women. Mm-hmm. As we watch Iran, unfolding these enormous. Maybe I want to say revolution, and it's the revolution for freedom and rights, basic rights, even basic human rights. It's so fascinating. And we are not promised rose gardens when we are born, so
Yes.
this is a long fight. But could I ask you something about Turkey and Israel in a more historical sense? In the Turkey will have this critical election, as you compared before, very critical election, very similar to that of Israel's today. Next year, when it is it's 100 years of becoming a
Yeah.
republic.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah, 100th-year
And
anniversary.
yes, and Israel, after 25 years, Turkey is becoming a republic. Israel has been founded. So 75 years of Israel is just, isn't it so? As
Yes,
foundation
yes,
of,
yes.
yeah,
Yep.
okay. But when they're both founded, they were both, pillars of secularism, modernism, and even democracy. I mean, for future, and it was.
Mhm.
I mean, people were thinking at least themselves as such. But I mean, after so many years, religion, religious fanaticism, whatever, even fascism. We are talking about fascism. Unbelievable.
Yes,
Of course, we can discuss Turkey
yes, yes.
fascist tendencies before, but what I'm saying is that such bright countries, let me put it this way,
Mhm.
and they became now something else. I mean, very old-fashioned in a way that, as you mentioned, something has about to come and would be, I hope, better. But they are still in the old days, these two countries, and they
Yeah.
because they couldn't solve the basic problem of their peoples, Palestinian, Arab, Jewish, Israeli,
Yes,
and
yes.
in Turkey, Kurdish,
Mm.
Turkish, Azeri, whatever.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
so could you comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, the two states are very similar in many ways. Israel itself, its roots to statehood goes back to 1920, very much after post World War I era, very much similar like Turkey. So the institutions were implemented in the 20s and 30s, and by 48 they had a state, and that's the Nakba, of course, the expulsion of Palestinians. But then you have this idea that they are going to be put on sort of this track. What is similar about both of them is the way that the Kemalists, in a sense, sort of implemented this sort of elitist ideas on a population that didn't necessarily agree with what they're thinking, and the Labour Party did the same thing. And the Labour Party, under David Ben-Gurion, was very exclusive and very excluded many of the Jews from Oriental background. So just like arabesque music was not popular or not allowed to hear on the radio, Jews from Arab countries, or Arab Jews, you can call them, their music of Mizrahi was also banned from the radios often. And some of Ben-Gvir's support is coming from small, not from settlers, from smaller development towns where you have decades of poverty of groups from originally from Arab countries that were excluded from the system, and they felt they never have a voice. And Likud was great for them for many years, but now they're seeing that the Likud has, I think, disappointed them. So if you're young and in a community where that the leftist or the left, or because the center left betrayed you, you only have one way to go, and that's the right wing. And I think that is now what we see with full circle with Turkey. Full circle with Turkey is different because Turkey has had 20 years AKP government. You can see it better, but we see that across the board, whether it's their children or the children of other parties, their overall sense of unhappiness. I think not if you brought everyone to vote who was 20 years old or 25 in Turkey, I think the opposition would be in a great position, right? So Israel's not at that stage yet. Israel's still in the stage where I think a disgruntled youth is looking for quick answers, right? Where Turkish youth today is now on track. What I see as a disgruntled youth looking for answers, not in a right wing or a fascist party, but in definitely in it could be right wing also, E party, right? But it's
Yes.
something much more holistic, right? And that's where you think of bringing like people like Mansur Yavash for presidency, right? Someone that they can sort of, even know his age, that he's just sort of like easygoing, people are tired. I think the Turkish youth are tired of crises every day. What we talked about in, Israel, they're tired of this also. But the Israeli youth is I think, let me say this, and it's part of the fascism, but the overall understanding of it is the Israeli youth today. They don't remember the conflict in the worst days of the conflict, right? They don't remember the worst days of a conflict. So for that reason, they're pushing hard to really set off another intifada or something. We don't know if that could happen, right? We don't know when intifadas happen, but you could not be more riper with this centrist government with their policies, right? For finding Palestinians to say, that's enough. We're tired of this, right? The Israeli youth don't remember that Palestinians have a voice. We'll hear it sooner or later. That I promise you. Okay? We're not hearing it now for numerous reasons, for internal differences, internal that. They have a voice, and they will be heard. And then that's going to shift the Israeli, I think, groups back to a more rational idea. Because no party right now is talking about ending the occupation. Okay, except maybe Meretz a bit, and of course Hadash, the Communist Tal party, but Tibi, they're speaking about this very openly, right? But it's a very small percent. They all say, well, it's not the time now. Well, when is the time then? When is the time, right? It's 55 years in the making. 55 years in the making. Israel's only 75, 55 years they're occupying. So that's also a bit different from the Turkish case also.
Lee, thank you. I took so much of your time, but it was a very frank, and sending conversation. I had some other questions, but I will not be asking them now. Maybe you can give us a Turkish interview regarding mostly about after the election when we have the results. Maybe what if the government changed? What will happen to Turkey-Israel relations? There are lots of new things happening, by the way. We couldn't talk any of
Absolutely.
them.
I would love to be back. I would love to be back and talk about it in more detail. Also, the next one we can do Turkish.
Yes,
I got a little lazy. I got a little lazy this time.
And also, I should say I am more than thankful that you are here with us for Mediascope English, and thank you to our all viewers. You can subscribe to our new Mediascope English channel if you haven't done so. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks so much. Take care, and we'll see the results soon. Thanks.
See you soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.